Hey guys, it's Zach, Ohio Skater, coming to you from my bed right now. This bad vlog. But basically talking about so I talked about how I wanted to move away from Ohio. Hopefully soon. Might stay here to get a master's degree, but hopefully I can move soon. But the top place on my list is honestly Spokane, Washington. Because I looked at Seattle, and I went into some Discord servers. I went into a Seattle Discord server, and I went into a Spokane Discord server. There's the people in Seattle are kind of different from the people in Spokane. But general Washington servers. But Spokane's in the eastern part of the state, and Seattle's in the western part of the state. Seattle's on the coast there. So I guess the eastern part of the state is more, I'm not totally sure. I'll get into that. But basically, from what I can tell, people in Seattle are more, on Discord, at least, from what I can tell, are more like nerdy types, really good with tech, kind of tech nerd kind of people, and they're very socially progressive, I would say. But Spokane is more, I don't want to say it's more conservative, but the people are more like rough and tumble, and maybe a little bit offensive, but it's all in good fun. It's nothing crazy bad or anything. But the people in Spokane are more a little more offensive, and a little more rough around the edges, for sure. But yeah. So, and that gets to what I want. So, at first I thought this was related to Washington, but it's actually related to Oregon. But I went back and found the article, and it's close enough. So basically, and I'm gonna draw some parallels and make some connections here. But so this article in Jacobin from last year, 2024, rural America's decline fueled Oregon's secession movement. So there is a secession movement in Oregon. And so what is this about? Basically, they're holding up a little sign here. There's a photo of people holding up a little sign here that says, "Move Oregon's borders, move Oregon's borders," and they have a URL under it that says greateridaho.org. So the people of Eastern Oregon, some of them would rather live in Idaho, and it talks about it because basically, the biggest population centers in these states are on the coast there, and that's where most of the people live, and they dominate the state level politics. And these are very liberal cities. You think of Oregon, you think of Portlandia, the show Portlandia, where it's basically a huge satire of liberalism. It's probably the most liberal city in the country, Portland, Oregon. And that's where most of the people in Oregon live. But these people in the eastern part of the state, they want to be a part of Idaho because they feel they would be better represented basically by Republicans, and they think they can have Republican representation if they join Idaho. And this article talks a lot about on the coast you have liberal elites. It's a socialist article. It's from Jacobin, and which is a socialist magazine. So they label these they don't label these cities in the West as socialists. They're kind of covering their own tracks. They say liberal elites, basically liberal elites. The liberal elites that are in these cities are basically they don't understand agricultural economies, is what the article is getting at. And in the eastern part of these states, it's more agricultural economies. That's what I was going to say like a minute ago. But like that, so these are agricultural economies, primarily agricultural economies. And the liberal elites in Portland do not understand these agricultural economies. And the two parts of the state have grown apart. Portland doesn't need the eastern part of the state anymore. We live with global trade now. Global trade. So they don't directly need what is right around them anymore. And the Republicans in eastern in eastern Oregon are taking advantage of this and proposing new borders because they want Republican representation. Now Spokane is in the eastern part of Washington, not Oregon, but Washington. Spokane is in the eastern part of Washington. And, Spokane, I did say these people are more offensive and more rough around the edges, but it's like a blue collar thing, so it's not like rich guy offensiveness. It's like a blue collar thing. So in a way it has a progressive tint to it, because these parts of the state are more disadvantaged than the more major population centers on the coast. So so there's a bit of an aura of progressivism about it, even though it is offensive. But it's like the satire you see on TV that comes off as progressive, but it's like Always Sunny in Philadelphia or South Park is what I'm trying to say, is what it's kind of like, whereas Portland and Seattle, that's straight up Portlandia, so but I've heard from people in Spokane, internet online communities centered around Spokane, that Spokane is right next to Idaho too. Spokane is basically on the border of Washington and Idaho, and the Spokane metropolitan area spreads into Idaho, a city called Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, French name, I think, Coeur d'Alene. And apparently Coeur d'Alene, the areas surrounding Coeur d'Alene there in northern Idaho, that little strip of northern Idaho, apparently it's a hotspot for far-right militias, and so things of that nature, maybe alt-right, maybe even fascist. But I feel like the Pacific Northwest, anywhere you go in the Pacific Northwest, you're going to have the most radical version of anything. The Pacific Northwest is where the extremists live, the extremists of any flavor, of any kind. Everything in the Pacific Northwest, ideology-wise, is to the extreme. Anywhere you go, you'll have anarchists and communists, and then you'll have the far right, and you'll have fascists, and there's a DSA in Spokane, I believe. Let me Google this. I know of a libertarian that lives in Spokane, but let me Google Spokane DSA. So, Spokane Democratic Socialists of America. Yeah, they have a Facebook page, which it has been recently active, February 17th. So, there's socialists in Spokane. There's everyone anywhere. And I like the Pacific Northwest as a region more than any specific place in the Pacific Northwest, because I don't want to be in the city too much. I want to be in nature, and what to say, these areas in the eastern part of the states are more farmland, but Spokane has Mount Spokane, a mountain, Mount Spokane, right next to it. There's skiing, there's snowboarding, there's the Spokane River, kayaking, the Spokane River flows right through downtown, and it's amazing. You got to look up some vlogs of people in Spokane, and they take you to the Spokane River, the Spokane River spot downtown, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So the city center. Okay, so I want to live like around the city, but see, with these smaller cities, Spokane has a population of 230,000. Akron has a population of 190,000, where I currently live, Akron, Ohio. So close to the size of Akron. But what you get, the advantages you get in these smaller cities is that the nature is more close to you. You don't have to travel so far through the city to get out to nature. It's an easy drive. It's easy to get there, basically. And it's much cheaper than Seattle. It's much cheaper than Seattle. And I'm basically looking at cost here is why I want to move to Spokane. First of all, is the cost of living. It's much more affordable than Seattle. Spokane is, and it's still more expensive than Ohio, but it's much more affordable than Seattle. And I would like to visit Seattle. I would like to check it out. When I'm over in Spokane, I'll probably make some trips over to Seattle. It's a 3-hour drive, I think, from Spokane to Seattle. Something like that, from one side of the state to the other side. But basically, I got to watch my back with these right-wing militia groups. But I don't think there's anything. I think any city center, we're talking about city limits here. Anytime you're in city limits anywhere, it's going to be a progressive environment. I don't care who you are because there's so many people right next to each other, and so things are more socially oriented, and so but when you look at the region, I guess there's probably some sort of beef between people on the Washington side of the border and people on the Idaho side of the border, but that it's a sketchy area in that Idaho part with the right wing folks, but Spokane I've heard is actually pretty progressive as well. It's probably a blue area, I believe. I'll look at the congressional map. Spokane is probably blue. The eastern part of the state is probably more red than the western part of the state, but Spokane is blue. Let me look up Spokane, Washington congressional map right now. Washington congressional, and I saw the city council. It doesn't say what parties they're in on the city council website, but it looked decently diverse. It did look decently diverse. So let's see here. Washington congressional, Washington's GovTrack. Let's see. Okay, this is nothing. This is yeah. Washington's congressional districts can't be Wikipedia. So let me see here. Oh, so Spokane actually has Republican representation. So there you go. So that just goes to show what talking about like Idaho, and the greater Idaho movement. I don't care, Republican, Democrat. The way I see it, what I'm doing is genius going to Spokane because you're going to a blue state, which is going to have a high state level minimum wage, right? But you're going to a conservative part of that blue state, which is going to have the easier standard of living than you're going to than the more liberal part. And so taking advantage of state level policies and local level policies in different ways, high state level minimum wage, Spokane as a local area, not too high cost of living, honestly. That minimum wage is going to go a lot further away, a lot longer in Spokane than it is in Seattle. Anyway, that's just a little discussion about so Spokane, Washington. Let's talk about Spokane. Spokane, the first people who lived in Spokane were hunter-gatherers by thousands of years ago, but the first recorded were the Spokane tribe. Spokane stands for Children of the Sun, or Sun People. That's the name. That's the translation of the name of that native tribe that lived there. And mining town back in the day, very agricultural as well. transitioning these days to a more service-oriented economy, which everywhere really is, honestly. So nothing new there. But you have the Spokane River. You're close to the Canadian border. Make trips up to Canada. And, of course, you have Mount Spokane. You're there next to the Selkirk Mountains. And you're in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And I saw a vlog this guy went to Spokane, and the architecture looked amazing. So, yeah. There you go. Anyway, I gotta watch my back when I'm there with these right-wing militias, but I think it's scare tactics. I think everywhere is pretty much, where I live in Cuyahoga Falls, that was known as not a great place for diversity type things back in the day, but, so I've experienced with places like that, but, anyway, this video's gone on long enough, but, so I'm gonna finish it, upload it, and see you later. Peace.